345 Center Street from Mr. Tom
Dave,
DiBiasi.
we don't bite, come forward.
It's a mixed-use building. It's under construction now.
This is what building?
Excuse me?
Well, I didn't hear
It's
it.
345 Center Street, right next to the Chase Bank. It's Mr. Tom DiBiasi. He ons the property. It's the Chase Bank,
Yeah.
and it's his old commercial building that he's knocked down. So the applicant's property is in a B3 zone, and it meets all the requirements for a permitted use for that business district. We issued a denial letter. There was one variance that was sought. It was for a curb cut. It was for 27 foot. In that zone, the required maximum is 20 feet. So they got a variance for that. Also, it went in front of the planning board for a site plan application. In our township, that's a mandatory requirement that the town has. The applicant met all the bulk requirements per the standard, per the zoning requirement. The application has a site plan here, and it goes through all the requirements that are available in that downtown zoning district. So in that zoning district, in a B3, the minimum lot area is required to be 5,000 feet. That property is 41,000 feet. The minimum lot width is 50 feet. That property is 249 feet. The minimum front yard setback is 3 feet. The proposed is 10 feet. The minimum side yard setback in that zone, none's required, that's 50 feet. The minimum rear yard setback in that zone required is 35. The proposed is 74 feet. The maximum building height in that zone is 40 feet. The building height proposed is 35 feet. The impervious coverage is not available in that zone. It doesn't require. You could meet that. The application meets all the parking requirements. What I'm showing you is that this application.
What are the parking requirements?
In that
Just
zone,
so I know.
in that zone, there's a calculation right on the plan. Residential, 10 two-bedroom dwelling units, 2 spaces are required, so that's 20 spaces. In the office, it's 329 square feet, 1 space for 300 feet, so there's 11 spaces. The bank has an existing parking lot, and they also went for a variance years ago when they were constructing the parking lot in the back. The application got approved at the planning board.
Dave, when you take the bank together with the building that's going into the mayor's question, the minimum number of parking spots required is how many?
The total parking spaces required is 41. The total spaces proposed are 43, so they're above the requirement for the township.
Okay.
What I'm trying to explain is that the application it's underbuilt per the township requirements. This project could have got built bigger. If you look at our bulk section, the setbacks could have been a lot more, so.
Okay. And there's been questions raised about the trees.
So, the tree, I have plans here I'd file at the code department. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer any questions relating to that. The trees. So on this plan, there's a demolition plan, okay? This is a demolition plan. Each X marks a tree to be removed. On this plan, there's approximately 21 trees that were to be removed from the property. Now, each X and circle depicts the size of the tree. So only certain trees are required to have a permit to be removed. So when John did his original review, he determined that there's 4 trees, and I highlighted them.
John being the forester.
John Linston, the town forester. And as,
So Dave, this so I'm clear on this. So there was, how many trees were proposed to be removed? 21?
approximately 21 on this plan.
So in other words, but the only trees that met the requirement were 4 of them because of circumference or
The diameter.
the diameter, okay.
Yeah, so of these trees, 4 of them met the requirements of ordinance number 665 with an 18-inch diameter. These trees were examined by the tree forester in May 2015 and deemed to be in decay and required to be removed under ordinance number 664-24. These trees are not required to be replaced by the applicant.
665 days,
665-24.
I have John Linson's memo here, if you wanna hear it. It says, and it's a memo to the file that he wrote, all right, that says, all trees removed on site were in conformance with the approved land use application for the property, and all trees were on subject property, not in Booth Park, in parentheses. Mr. DiBiasi initially wanted to preserve trees along the mutual property line with Booth Park. Upon inspecting the site in regard to the site plan application, I noticed that the trees were decayed and potentially hazardous and needed to be removed irregardless of the application. In fact, a large limb off one of the trees fell into Center Street a short time after my inspection prior to their removal. There is an approved tree re-landscaping plan for the site on file in the construction office. There's also one park department, which I reviewed it. My initial comments from the planning board addressed the safety issues of the trees along Booth Park, the need for additional trees and replacement landscaping and drainage issues. All these conditions were addressed by the applicant to my satisfaction and the revised plans accepted by the planning board.
Yep,
So that's John's
report,
memo to the file, exactly.
exactly.
So,
And so there was another tree, Dave, that came up afterwards.
This is a tree that was on the Center Street side that was damaged by PSE&G. So the applicant advised the forester when they were doing the demolition that this tree, there was an issue with the tree. The additional tree needed to be removed and then was examined by John. John came out there, examined, said it was okay, and approved that the tree be demolished. Mr. DiBiasi and Tom worked at where that Mr. DiBiasi is gonna reinstall a new tree per the township's liking. And that's something that typically happens with these kind of applications, these planning board applications. Before they're completed, when we go to the final application, John's gonna go out there, he's gonna do an inspection, he's gonna be involved through the process.
now, just as a follow-up to that, all right, it wasn't clear enough, I didn't think, all right, and we had this discussion after the last meeting, in the application, all right, how a project like this, all right, impacts that tree ordinance, all right? It was never my intention when I did the tree ordinance to hit these people twice for a fee.
Sure.
All right, the review was done by the construction code office. They paid how much money for permits, ballpark?
Yeah, thousands of, like $4,000. Yeah.
Thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
All right, so what we're clarifying, and Alan, you can just jump in at any time you feel necessary, we're clarifying that language so that it's spelled out crystal clear that when you go through a site plan review like this, and you go through this process through the code office, if the trees are within the envelope of the building, all right, and what improvements are going on there, you don't need to pay the $50 per tree, all right?
Even if it's
But-
outside the envelope of the building.
Right, if it's outside, that's a different story. But what Commissioner Evans and I spoke about is that we're setting up a process where when something like this is approved, the Parks Department is notified. It's a bit redundant, but again, in the interest of clarity,
But,
we're gonna issue the tree removal.
but Commissioner, you obviously, you're part of this, and Nutley's been for years, been part of Tree City USA.
Absolutely.
And so we track trees because it's part of our tree report. And
We
our
have an
canopy.
inventory, we have our tree report, and the reason that we are Tree City is because we commit X amount of dollars, we do X amount of plantings, prunings.
So-
We have a shade tree department in place that does this work.
So we agree that an information notice to
Mhm.
the forester is important so he can keep track of
Exactly.
his tree records.
So as we keep the inventory, the tree inventory in town up to where it needs to be, all right, we can replace as we go along. And most of the time, when we have applications like this or similar to this, when we approach the property owners, they're more than willing. They're going for hundreds of thousands of dollars in most cases, all right, to improve their buildings or to build something else. So to put a couple of trees in is not a big deal and something that they want to do.
And just for the record, the section B and C of the tree ordinance requires the forester to do a review
Yes.
of the application and report on it.
Mhm.
So this is not something that is new
No.
or is being added. We're only gonna deal with the fee
The-
issues.
exactly.
Clarify them because they're not very clear.
He's
Right.
also listed in our site plan ordinance. In our site plan ordinance, we have a committee, site plan committee.
Mhm.
John Linson is listed on there,
Yes.
as well as all the other various departments
And
in
that's
the
why
township.
a set of those plans are in the parks.
Yeah.
And I have this.
Otherwise, they would have no
Exactly.
business being there.
And I just wanted I thought it would be important for everybody to understand is that John Linson was involved with this application from the
Mhm.
beginning. He was before the planning board.
I also have a review letter from John before the application was even constructed.
So, back in May. So it's been pretty pretty much following the absolute letter of what our laws require, so.
And look, we all know trees in Nutley are like the flag, apple pie, motherhood. They're like our children, and that's how we handle them.
Baseball.
Baseball,
We will never
the
be.
Yankees, what?
We will never be caught up with you.
There you go.
And
If you keep going, Steve's gonna stand up. and
I know,
cross
he's
the
like,
line.
he'll have 100.